Hey everyone, welcome to Wine About Data podcast here at Transform Consulting Group. I'm Danae Green. I'm one of your hosts, and I'm joined by...
I'm Amanda Lopez, president here at Transform Consulting Group.
Let's first start off with our wine. Amanda, what do you got for me today? What are we drinking?
I'm excited. So this is called a Chardonnay. It's like a blend of a Chardonnay. I know.
Sorry, that just took me by surprise. I didn't know what we were drinking.
But it is from a winery up in Lake Michigan, so Southwest Michigan. So we love to go up there. We have a lake house up there. And actually one of our team members, Sarah Dillon, is from there. And so that's just kind of in her old backyard. But it's a really good, take a sip. See what you think.
I haven't had any yet. Mm-hmm.
It's a really nice, white, crisp, light, fruity drink. I love that in the summertime.
Very great summer drink.
Yeah, grilling out with seafood, fish, cheese board.
I just never had heard of
Chardonnay.
Yeah. Well, I am a fan, and I think this might be something I need to add in. You go to Michigan a lot.
Yes, like a whole region of wine tasting. So probably on the podcast, we'll be introducing a lot of different Michigan wineries, which you wouldn't think of, but it's a great place to stop.
I know. I love that. Well, there you go. You learned some more data and more information just around our wine tasting. Pull up a glass of whatever you choose to drink. It doesn't have to be wine. It could be coffee. It could be your pop or some water. But settle in for our show here as we get started. Our last episode was around outputs and outcomes.
Right.
You want to do a little quick recap?
We're staying on the train of really for nonprofits to understand, what are your key metrics? What is it that you're focused on achieving and accomplishing? So we hopefully broke it down for you. So outputs were they're the activities, the services that you provide, the things you touch, and your outcomes are the result of those activities, programs, and services you deliver.
Fantastic. Today, we're going to build on that one. This podcast really takes outcomes to that next level. And we're going to talk about SMART outcomes and outputs.
Yes. So I feel like a big thing we're tackling with this, like the whole series of podcasts about data, is learning the lingo. There's acronyms, terms that just seem weird and awkward. Like, why did we call it that, right? But SMART is an acronym that's used, I think, as like a litmus test to help you determine how clear are your metrics and really measurable. So let's break down, what does SMART stand for?
It's not clear. It's not about how smart you actually are.
That's right. I mean, we can't really measure how smart, but it gives you a test, and you'll see as I spell it out. So the acronym stands for: S is for specific, M is for measurable, A is for achievable, R is for relevant, and then T is for time-based.
So Good job. You spelled it right.
I know. I don't have my cue card with me, which is a good thing. It means I really know it, and I could do that, litmus test. But essentially, you would take any indicator that you have and kind of pull it up and say, does it check the box for each of those? And so let me unpack that a little bit further. Yep. So what does it mean to be specific? It's really focusing in on clearly and explicitly articulating who is being impacted by this work. What are some of the key components, so we can be really clear and measurable, not just saying something really broad. And I know we're going to talk through some examples that will help unpack that a little bit more. But the M stands for measurable. Yeah. So that's where we want to be. A lot of times you might see a measure, it might say increase, expand, but increase by how much? Expand by how much, or by when? I mean, so you want to have what is the indicator to kind of measure that expansion or that growth that we want to see, or whatever that might be. And then A for achievable. Yep. So sometimes we might set out and say 100%, but it's probably not realistic to get 100% accomplished, right? Or to have everybody reach that 100% milestone. It's also important to understand the baseline of where you're starting from. And if you wanted to, double that increase, is that realistic with an achievable within that time span? So that A is really kind of making sure that we are setting, maybe aggressive, but, some metrics of growth, but that they're achievable to accomplish. And then the R stands for relevant. So we want to have indicators that are meaningful, right? And applicable to what's today. Because again, I think sometimes we get stuck and we've always measured something, or we've always done it this way. And maybe in today's context, or the programming that you're providing, or who you're serving, or the change that you want, it's not as meaningful anymore. Right. So ensuring those indicators have that relevance to the context. And the last one is really important, is that time-based. Yep. So there should be an end result. So by the end of the program, we hope to achieve this. By this year, we hope to achieve this so that we have a clear end point.
In all the years you've been doing this, what do you typically see as missing, or does it vary?
I think S&M probably is the biggest offenders. There's not always that real clarity of measurable. When we might come in and we're asked to do an evaluation and we say, okay, what are the indicators? What are the measures? And we go in and say, how do we know that this is the thing that you wanted? Like increased reading attainment.
Yeah. So how did you know that?
Where's the baseline? Where are they at? Where do we want to go? Are we wanting to get them to the standard? Are we wanting to increase by 30%? Do we want, 60% to be at reading level? So there's a lot of different ways that you can measure that, but having that real specificity is important.
And then that measurable number is where you see. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I just wondered because as I was like listening to you, I'm like, there's got to be like a somewhat of a trend.
I mean, I think all of them can kind of fall off the radar sometimes. Sometimes, again, we think we have this measure and it might be smart, but then it's not meaningful. It's not relevant to their priorities and goals. So that's important to kind of maybe rethink. And then that time also, there's not always an end point. And how do we know, okay, by this point, we should get here?
Yeah. Well, and even as we were mini prepping for this episode, I was like, Amanda, I think everybody in general, knows SMART goals, even knows the acronym. They may not be able to just rattle it all off 100%, but for the most part, we all have heard this. Then there's the tricky part of doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And then I even said the next thing is like, sometimes I feel like it's easier to do things when something is actually like more measurable, financials, or when that outcome seems more clear.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, and fortunately, we're in a business where not everything is so tangible.
Yeah. We're working with humans, right? For the most part, nonprofits who we work with are wanting to help other people in a variety of ways. And so we can be messy and it's not always explicit about what is that change that you want and how to make it measurable.
Yeah. So I think that's where in this social sector world that we're in, it's like, well, how do we really make that SMART?
Mm-hmm.
Whatever that goal is.
Right.
Like I worked in a faith-based nonprofit and one of them was like spiritual life.
Yeah.
And it was like, how do we know if that's working?
Right.
I think you can do some outputs and just some basic information, but then how would you actually go about trying to craft that in a way that makes sense, but also leaves room for the spiritual side of it, I guess?
So again, we could go down the SMART acronym to help guide us. So specific, who's a participant? Who's being impacted? Maybe with the nonprofit you were at, it would be teens.
Yep.
So we might say the students who are involved in this program or this organization, right? So those participants. And then what's the change that you're hoping to see? Do we want them to feel connected? Do we want them to have a knowledge and understanding about, a spiritual relationship, right? And so that could be it. We might say the participants in this program increase their knowledge by this or report that they have this. Obviously, self-reported data isn't gold star because, again, it's people taking that kind of opinion of where they're at. But we can start there. So I think looking at the change that you want to see, we've worked with a few other faith-based nonprofits, and they're often trying to have people like have a connection, build awareness, increase their knowledge, strengthen their relationship. So those words. And then making it measurable is by how much, like what is that change in progress? Sometimes it might be no relationship, like I don't attend church or I don't have a relationship with God or whoever, and so by the end they want to have that relationship, right? Or they want to have an engagement of a faith community. Right. And so they could say they're actively engaged. So by the end of the program, we're going to see it here.
Right. Do you have any others that are kind of hard in all the years?
Well, I do think there are some that tend to lend themselves to a little bit more of rigor because there's like assessment tools in place. Okay. So things around educational attainment, because for the most part, you have those assessment tools at schools or programs that can use. But there's this whole other area because we do a lot of work with nonprofits that are helping kids and youth. So sometimes getting data from kids is hard depending on the age and development of the youth. But another area is around this like social emotional learning is really a growth area, an area that we know from research is an important and has a huge factor, not only in students' educational attainment, but like them thriving in life overall. And so there have been some helpful tools to focus on areas of importance and skills like learning social skills, socialization, being able to have like conflict resolution or healthy conflict, or, feelings of connectedness or not feeling isolated. So then as you kind of unpack, okay, what does social emotional involve? What is like my program or service focused on? Are we helping kids to become more connected with their peers? Are we helping them learn to resolve conflict? Are we helping them learn how to have leadership aptitude? So kind of unpacking some of those skills. Yeah. And again, then you focus in, because I think sometimes our metrics, we try to be so broad.
Right.
And again, like social emotional, that can mean a lot depending on the area that you want to go. So I think just focusing in on, okay, this is a skill we're focused on, building resilience, building leadership. And then you have a measure or a metric specifically for that.
And I just think even as you're talking, what a cool thing to be able to get clarity for your programming. This is one of those key things. It's not this big, crazy goal that nobody knows what we're really trying to do. You can really streamline everything.
Yeah. And I think for us as a consultant coming in, we're asking questions so we can we look at it with like more objective lens, and we can, ask that third party. And so I think that helps the program and staff to step back and say, okay, yeah, this is really what we're trying to do. This is really what we're focused on. So let's be really clear about that. And that's what the whole idea of the SMART goal is. And there's a lot of great quotes out there. It's like what gets measured gets done. And if we're not clear about that, then how do we know if we're making progress and accomplishing our goals along the way?
If somebody wanted to really get started with really looking at their goals and to making them get smart, what would you have them do?
Yeah, so I would have them first do a data audit, because more than likely, doesn't that sound fun?
Yeah, you pulled that out on me.
Anybody who's worked with us knows that's kind of where we start, because more than likely you're already collecting data, right? You already have a lot of data. So it's not like I want you to go out and create more SMART measures. What I really want you to do is refine what you already have. Yeah. Go through and look at all the indicators that you have and do the SMART litmus test for each indicator. Are all of these still meaningful, relevant, and adding value? Are we using them internally to drive program improvement? Are we using them externally to make the case for funding or partnerships? So let's go ahead and cut some off, because more than likely you don't need all of it. No. And then once you focus in on like, yes, these are the areas that we really are wanting to track and are important for our organization. Now let's make them SMART.
So I think you heard one of the experts say that you can do a data audit and look and see if you actually need all of it.
That's right. Yes, I'm telling you, less is more. I'm like the Marie Kondo of data management here, right?
I think that's refreshing, because I agree. We are collecting more data than ever.
Yeah.
And I know that there are a lot of programs out there and services, organizations that are collecting and they're reporting. And I think we're just getting to that point where I think they do need permission.
Yeah.
In some ways to say, like, you can clean that up.
Right. Now, certainly, depending on the level of authority you have in your organization, you have to build some buy-in from leadership, or you might have to go to a funder if you've agreed to collect these data points and make the case of why we're refining and cleaning them up a little bit. But typically, we find that type of transparency funders tend to be on board about. They want you to have that clarity of focus. As long as it still aligns with their priorities, they're typically okay with that. But then I would say the next step, so like we've refined them, we've identified, we've workshopped out. So now you have all of these beautiful SMART measures, outcomes, outputs, whatever you need. Now you need to go back to your data tools where you collect this data and make sure there's a good one-to-one matchup. So that specificity, that measurability that we want, that we have tools and sources in place to collect that data and report out.
So you have SMART goals. You have the right data that you want to collect, and then you have the tools now to collect it.
Yep.
Okay, well, am I missing anything else here in this recipe?
The third step in the process is now that once you start getting that data, you're going to analyze it, right? You're going to pull it out from whatever tools you have, assessment tools, surveys. If you're doing individual interviews with clients or participants, you're going to summarize it and report back out to say, okay, we set out this goal using your example earlier around spiritual growth or faith, or my example of social emotional learning. Did we actually see the change happen?
Right.
Did we hit our target of by this much of an increase by the end of this timeline for these specific audience or participants? Yes or
Yeah.
no.
And so like truly, yes, we want you to have SMART goals, but there is this whole other process in the end goal here, which is being able to really articulate at the end and tell that story.
Yep, exactly. I think the beauty of it and where we start with that as being our step one in the process is you got to be clear and really specific about where you are going and making it measurable. So
doesn't Brene Brown say clear is kind?
Yeah.
I'm totally.
Well, otherwise your staff are pulling their hair out because then they're being called to create a grant report or an annual report and they're like, I don't know what this means.
Yeah. Or you can't get people to do it.
Yeah.
Like to really collect all that data, to really engage and to do all the things you need. And I think that's part of what we see is my guess.
Yeah.
In a lot of cases, once you can really articulate where this data is going to go and how it really helps your organization, that buy-in works a lot better.
You've outlined now for your team too, a really clear roadmap. So they're not having to like reinvent the wheel every time and to figure out, okay, what's the methodology? Like this is the denominator, this is the numerator, to be very clear and specific here, right? And this is why this data is being used or not. Like you have to be that much into the weeds, but then their staff aren't churning and wasting time.
Yeah. And I think in the nonprofit sector, we're all don't want to waste our time.
No, everybody is so overwhelmed doing multiple jobs.
Yep.
Right. And so any way that we can refine our process, a little bit of work on the front end of getting clear, using the SMART framework saves everybody in the long run.
Thanks, Amanda, for a great episode on SMART goals. That is it for us today. We'd love to hear from you. So whether you're watching on YouTube or you're listening on your favorite podcast app, please leave a review, preferably 5 stars if you can, and let us know what you like so far. Thanks again. And this is one less thing that you have to whine about. Cheers to you. Cheers to you.